Hello lovely people, I'm Catherine and this is Stella, I don't know if she's in shot, and welcome to this week's episode of Park Home Life. This week I asked you on the community tab here on YouTube if you had any questions for me, those of you who've been following me for a while. If you're new here, some of this might not make sense to you because you don't have the backstory, but anyway, I hope if you like what you see in here that you'll stick around and maybe find out more. That sounded a bit... yeah, anyway, I don't know. I feel a bit self-conscious all of a sudden, I don't know why, like I'm being interviewed, which isn't really the case because I've seen all the questions in advance and had time to think about them. But anyway, I have made some notes because I've got no way of remembering. Thank you so much, there were some wonderful questions. I'm going to start, I kind of categorised them, being as how I trained as a librarian, to try and put some sort of order. But there will be some randomness. So I'm going to start with the simple one, which is how tall am I? I am, or I think I'm 5'7". Now I say I think I am because I've been saying I'm 5'7" for, since I was an adult. But a friend of mine reported the other day that she went for a health check and they measured her height and she was 1.5 inches shorter than she thought. So perhaps I've shrunk, but as far as I'm aware I'm 5'7". The person that asked that said that they were very tall, and I've reported in a video where I talked about Manx patchwork, where you measure the cloth with your hands and your fingers and your thumb, that my hand span from here to here is 8 inches. And this person, I think she said she was 5'10" and her hand span was the same as mine, so she thought I must be tall. Well, obviously I'm not as tall, but hands maybe don't necessarily relate. Stills. So she's now chewing her yak bone, there might be noises off. So anyway, I'm 5'7" as far as I know, and the span of my hand is 8 inches. It's a lot of wittering. There was some questions about my hair, various questions about my hair. Do I cut it myself? Yes I do. It's all the same length, so it's pretty easy. Basically all I do is when the end of my twist gets a bit wispy, I just cut it with whatever scissors happen to be in my hand. I did it recently, I think it was with the nail scissors, so I haven't been to a hairdresser in years. Is this a braid? No, it's a twist. I used to do a braid, and on some of the photos of me on here, I think the little photo in the green jumper, it is a braid. I hope the bone chewing's not annoying. And then a lady called Machtelt, who has a YouTube channel called A Daily Dose of Paper, when I did a video showing how to twine cloth, to make cloth twine, she told me that a friend of hers braids her hair in that way, so I started doing it. And ever since then that's what I do. So it's basically you get 2 strands of hair and then you twist it one way and cross it the opposite way exactly. There's a video about cloth twining. In fact, there's a whole playlist. So if you go and look at that and you've got long hair, I'm sure you can work it out. And then I put different bits of things in. I nearly always have this. This is a bit of eco print silk that I just twine in. And then today, for a bit of extra colour, I've put in a bit of blue sari silk. So just when I've done the first couple of twists, I get the double length of whatever cloth I'm going to put in, and put one length with each section of hair and just twist it in. And then when I get to the bottom I just tie it around. So that's my hair. How long is it? Like I said, I've just trimmed it. I think it's kind of just above my waist if it's not in the braid, or somewhere past the middle of my back. But like I said, I cut it if it gets wispy. And I have mentioned here and there that I did used to have dreadlocks up until about 2018. And I have been through my photos and I found a photo of my dreadlocks, and I'll insert that at the very end of the video, so if you're interested in seeing my dreadlocks, you'll have to wait till the end or fast forward. I now live in a park home. I'm going to have a little sip of my tea. This is not in my normal You Got This mug because it's not tea, it's lemon and ginger with some honey. And my normal You Got This mug I only use for tea. I don't know why. And I use this for other kinds of tea. I'm just a bit strange. Oh, it's hot still, but it's nice. What was I saying? Oh, it's a park home. Before I moved here last September, I lived in France. I lived in France for 7 years, and then my relationship broke up, and I came back to England, where my friends are and where I have a network. If I am going to start teaching in person again, which I'll talk more about later. And basically I just wanted to come home, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I had very minimal funds, so I bought a little park home. A park home, I believe in other countries, is called a mobile home, and it's on a site for over 50s, and it's on the edge of a town, and so I've got the town's on one side, and on the other side is a woodland and some fields and, you know, nice country walks, so it's a very nice location. I don't know how many there are on the site, but, you know, it's a little community basically. It's very friendly, and, you know, people are lovely, and it's very quiet as well, because we're all oldies probably. Someone said about living in a small space and cooking smells. That was quite an interesting one. Yeah, it's very small. It's got one bedroom and a second room that they laughingly... Sorry, I just kicked the stand. I hope I didn't make you wobble. There's another room that they call a bedroom, where you could just about fit a single bed in there, but you would then have about 8 inches to walk down the side. So I have it as a craft room, sewing room, whatever. I don't often work in there, but it's very good for storage, and there is a little video of it in a former episode of Park Home Life, where I put some cheese boxes up on the wall to make storage and so on. And I am also going to talk later about storing stuff, you know, if you've got a lot of stuff and how you manage all that. So yeah, so it's small, and I've got a bathroom and a kitchen and the living room where I'm sitting now. I think it's sort of 38 feet long by 11, or it's 12 feet wide on the outside, but inside it's slightly less. When I cook, I close the kitchen door basically, because at one end is the living room and the kitchen, and then there's a door into a little hallway, and then there's the bedroom, my craft room, and the bathroom. And also in the hallway is the smoke detector. So if I'm cooking in the kitchen, I shut that door into the hallway and I open the kitchen window. Also, you have to be aware of condensation and things, you know. So I must say that I don't really notice cooking smells in my bedroom, and I have got quite sensitive nose. The other thing is I love the smell of nag shampoo incense, and I burn that everywhere, including in my bedroom. So in general, you know, well, in the morning when I get up, I always turn the heating off and open my bedroom windows and let it air for, you know, the best part of the day. But then later on I'll burn a nag shampoo in there, so it smells all lovely and hippie-ish when I go to bed. That's just me. The house in France, which was a big 4-bedroomed house, partially renovated, shall we say, but there the kitchen, the stairs going up led directly from the kitchen, and the ceilings below, which were the floors above, were just boards over beams, and there the cooking smells would go straight through to the bedrooms upstairs. So, you know, I don't think it's got a lot to do with size. How long can I witter on about cooking smells? It's not got a lot to do with the size of your home, it's how you manage it and, you know, how it's arranged and that kind of thing. Anyway, my son and daughter, Joey and Lily, do they watch my videos? Yes, they sometimes do watch these. They don't watch the stitching videos very much, I don't think. I think sometimes my son, if he remembers, puts me on in the background just so I get a view, you know, a YouTube view, just to help me out. But my daughter especially likes to watch these if Stella's involved, you know, if there's a walk with Stella or something, because she misses Stella. They're both in France still. They're both studying and working in France, and it's lucky that they live in a city with an airport with a direct flight to my local airport, so it is quite easy when they have time. I mean, they're, you know, both in their early 20s and very busy, but it is fairly easy and cheap for them to come and see me. Someone asked about my mum. She's still in France as well. She's been in France longer than I was. I think she's been there since 2005, something like that. And she's very settled there. I did talked to her about, you know, when I was coming back, I did discuss it with her, of course, and discuss possibilities of her coming as well, and, you know, us maybe living together or whatever. But she didn't want to. She wanted to stay put. And she's fit, and, you know, she can drive still, and she's got friends, and, you know, she's quite happy there. That's her choice. Are my children creative? Yes, they are. When they were little, I used to do all kinds of creative stuff with them. They each have a little fabric collage they made of a rainbow. I think they've both still got theirs. My daughter, when she was about 4 or 5, I was doing a lot of free machine quilting, and I would let her use my big Janome sewing machine, and she was brilliant at free machine quilting because she had no fear. These days my son plays his guitar a lot. He's quite musical. He does occasionally do a bit of drawing. He's very good at drawing. There's actually a picture that he drew of Sirius, my dog, who I lost early last year, on the wall in the kitchen that my son drew. And we keep talking about he wants to learn to either knit or crochet or both. We talked about doing it at Christmas, but we didn't get around to it. But, you know, if I make them things, both of them, if I make them blankets or, you know, anything like that, they keep them. They treasure them, they appreciate things I've made, which is lovely. My daughter crochets. In fact, she made me a little crochet bag for Christmas, and she also made me this. It was for my birthday a couple of years ago. Which is a crochet basket, bucket bag type thing. So she likes to crochet. And oh, by the way, they bought me this lamp for Christmas as well, which is lovely. This is my Christmas present from the children. And she also does journaling sometimes. I've helped her make journals, and, you know, she does sort of creative journaling. The horses, yeah, that's a tough one. Someone asked about when I lived in France. I had a horse, and my daughter had a horse, so we had 2 horses. They obviously couldn't come. Well, they could have come with me, but I would have had to have put them somewhere in livery, and it would have been very expensive. And also my daughter's horse was quite old. But luckily my farrier, the chap who used to come and trim their hooves, they were both barefoot, unshod, who is a lovely man, you know, natural horsemanship, gentle and so on. His wife wanted a horse that she was confident enough to ride out on her own, and in his herd there wasn't a horse that, you know, that fit the bill. And my horse is you know, as bomb-proof as they come. So I let him take them on trial, and my horse, Baldur, and his wife clicked. And so that's where they've gone to live, and Baldur is now her horse. And I'm very happy about that he's got his own person. And my daughter Lily's horse, Raf, who is in his 20s, is guaranteed, you know, comfort and care for the rest of his days, and to stay with Baldur. So they're now in a little herd there of oldies and gentle horses. Will I ride here was the other question. Funnily enough, the photo of me with dreadlocks is of me hugging a horse. It's a retired police horse at a rescue centre that I visited. Yeah, I've always loved horses since I was a little girl. It's still painful because going from being lucky enough to have your own horses in the field behind your home, and rides from your doorstep, you know, with no traffic or anything, the thought of going here to a riding stables and riding a riding stable horse, you know, at the moment I would say that's not going to happen, but, you know, never say never. But at the moment I would say no. Even if I'm driving and I see horses in a field, I sort of don't look at them. Yeah, so, but I'm assured that they're looked after. That for me was the main thing, and that they're together. My favourite book. My favourite book when I was younger was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and I still love it, and I still read it every now and then. I first read it probably in my early teens, I think because the heroine is Catherine, although spelt differently to me, and that whole Heathcliff Cathy romantic, you know, a bit wild, and I'm from the north of England, you know. And then of course Kate Bush came along, who I adored, and the song Wuthering Heights, and yeah, so Wuthering Heights I would say is my all-time favourite book. More recently, in more recent years, another favourite book is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. That was one of those books when I read it that was kind of life-changing. I love the way that she brings together the kind of sacred aspect of nature as a woman with Indigenous American heritage, Native American heritage, with the fact that she's a professor of botany, so the science side of it. So if you haven't read it, I mean, I read it at least once a year. I don't know how many times I've read it now. It's just her whole philosophy. Stell, stop nibbling your foot, boo. Sorry about that. It's just her whole philosophy and way of looking at the world, you know. It's a wonderful book. Favourite book, favourite film. I don't really have a sort of all-time favourite film, really. I mean, there are old films that I love just for nostalgia's sake, like the original Incredible Journey I've talked about before, not the later Disney one, but the original one from, I think it was in the 70s or something, you know, of the two dogs and the cat that make the journey. And then films, it's more associating them with who I went to see them with or whatever, I think. I remember going to see Calamity Jane at the cinema with my cousin and my aunt, and my cousin and I thought we were the two women characters in Calamity Jane for ages and sang the songs and, you know, things like that. Films I've watched recently, or sort of in recent years, that I've loved are films with kind of interesting ideas or maybe quirky ideas. The two that spring to mind are a little film called About Time, which has got an interesting sort of time travel-y idea, but not really in a science fiction way. It's very human. It's about the people and the relationships between the people. And then another film with another interesting kind of science fiction-y idea, but not in the conventional sense, is a film called Yesterday, which is another British film, just by chance. And the premise is that it ends up there's only one person left alive who knows about the existence of the Beatles. It's actually giving me chills talking about it. Nobody else knows the Beatles. The Beatles didn't exist. Something happens and just this one person, and that's not a spoiler, you know, that's right up at the beginning of the film. And then it unfolds from there. And I just love it's really quirky, and, you know, you have to sort of put your disbelief on hold as to how that happened. But it's not about that again, it's about the people and everything. So that's called Yesterday. And the third thing I like, which might come as a surprise, and it wasn't something I would have watched except for it was recommended by a friend years ago when it first sort of came out, is Breaking Bad, which is, if you don't know, it's an American series about drugs and drug dealers. But again, the friend who told me is a friend of mine who was a drama teacher and has been an actress as well. And she said, oh, it's like a Jacobean tragedy, you know, it's got all aspects of the human condition and morality, and it really has. So, you know, looking past the violence and, you know, some language and all the other stuff, again, it's about the people. And I think I re-watch that series also about once a year. And what I love about it as well is your kind of expectations are flipped in terms of the morality of the characters. The people who you would expect maybe on the surface to be the moral good ones are not. It's the people who you wouldn't expect to be the morally good ones who are. If you haven't watched it, I don't want to give spoilers. But, you know, if you're someone who says, oh, I won't watch something that's, you know, gun violence and all that, drugs and so on, maybe put that on hold and just give it a try, because, yeah, I love it. Anyway, Breaking Bad. There we go. Stella and... sorry, I missed one out. Desert Island Discs. Desert Island Discs is a Radio 4 programme that's been going for years, if you don't know, if you're not in the UK, where the guest is told that they're going to be cast away on a desert island, and they're allowed to take various things with them. And one of the things is 8 records, 8 pieces of music. And someone asked me what mine were. Well, I don't know if I could do 8. I do remember... I'm going to have another drink of tea. I do remember some sort of, you know, sessions with friends and a bottle of wine until 4 in the morning and sitting around saying what would our desert island discs be. And it's really hard to narrow it down to 8 if you love music. But 2 definite ones for me would be Midnight Train to Georgia by Gladys Knight and the Pips and Bridge Over Troubled Water by Simon and Garfunkel. Those 2 tracks would definitely be on my 8. What the other 6 would be might well change from, you know, mood to mood, year to year. But definitely those 2. Stella and Fredfred. Stella is 10. She was 10 at the end of November. We got her as a puppy. She is actually Lily's dog, technically. She was advertised in, I think, in the local paper in a village not very far from where we lived at the time. We had Sirius, my dog who I lost early last year already. And before we had Sirius, we had my little Dougal dog, who was a little Jack Russell Dachshund cross type dog. There's a story there. He came from Ireland. There's a story as to how I got him. I won't go into it now because I think this is already going to be hours long. But maybe I'll tell you in another video. So I had my little Dougal, who was probably about 1 when I got him, the vet said. And he lived to be way past 17, 18. And he died, sadly. He had a very good and long life. And I already had Sirius. And then I wanted a second dog, you know, I just liked having 2 dogs at that time. And Lily knew about this particular breed, a cockapoo, and we knew another little cockapoo that was this colour. And so when we saw her advertised, we got her. And she's called Stella because Sirius's name comes not from Harry Potter, but from Sirius the dog star, from where the Sirius in Harry Potter came from. Sirius is Canis Major, the dog star. So that was Stella, it means star, so it just went with Sirius. That's how she got her name. Fredfred, my cat I had when I lived in England before and who went to France with me and then died there, sadly, was called Barney. And he was called Barney because the family I got him from as a kitten, their surname was Barney. So I just called him Barney. So then when he died in 2019, November-ish I think it was not long after my dad died, so I was a bit of a mess. I didn't want another cat, certainly not then, and then one day one of the neighbour's daughters knocked at the door with a box with a kitten in it. And you know, me being me, and actually it was for Lily. And that was Fredfred. And so he became Fred because Fred and Barney, you know, Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, just seemed logical. And he sort of, you know, wormed his way into my affections. And at one point I thought Fred's not enough of a name for him, so it just got doubled up to Fredfred. So that's how Fredfred got his name. Yeah, and he's 5-ish. Again, he wasn't a tiny kitten, but he was still definitely a kitten. So I think we say his birthday somewhere around August, September 2019, so he'll be 6 this year. Someone asked about my little sewing box / table, which is over there, which again has been seen in videos, you know, looking around my home. It is a sewing box on legs with a lid that lifts off and a little drawer. And I actually bought it in a junk shop not very far from where I'm sitting now, although I didn't live here at the time. And I bought it as a telephone table. At that time I had a landline in the place where I lived in England before, and I just wanted a little table in the hallway just to keep the fixed telephone on. And that was in a junk shop, and I was being hurried. I won't say by who, but you can maybe guess. So I just thought, well, that's the right size and it wasn't expensive, so I paid for it. And as I put it in the car, it rattled. And when I got it home, in it was someone's sewing life. You know, there was threads and needles and pocket linings and hems or cuffs that had been cut off clothing that had been altered, and you know, all sorts of stuff. And Lily and I spent a lovely afternoon going through it and examining all the things. Unfortunately, at the time, I didn't think to video it or you know, take photographs or anything. but now it's there, and it's got my stuff in, and it's a handy little table, but it's also storage. So that's the story of my little sewing box. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to get through all the questions in one. There might be some have to be pushed back till next time, because I've hardly scratched the surface. I am known for wittering. So my sewing box I talked about. Yes, so going from that to sort of a more serious subject, or serious is the right word, I don't know. Someone asked me if I'm happy now, if I have adjusted to living on my own. The answer to that is, well, the first part, am I happy? Sometimes is the reply. I suppose that's the same for all of us, probably. It's still very early days. Hello, Stella. It's all right, boo. It's still very early days. It was only September last year, really, that I actually moved in. Although I knew the change was coming from probably May. Knew for sure that the relationship was over. Living alone, it's hard to say, it's not one size fits all, is it? Some people are perfectly happy living alone and wouldn't want it any other way. Other people are thoroughly miserable living alone. For me, because I wasn't happy in my relationship, being away from that is a relief. So there's a happiness to be had there. Also, he was away a lot throughout our relationship. So I was used to, whole weeks of being alone. And being alone is not the same as being lonely, is it? I've come back here where I have friends. I've got, friends that I've known for years around here. So, of course, they're not there all the time, are they? It's not the same as actually living with somebody or sharing a home with somebody. But I have people I can call on. And that, those are friends that I've made and that I've kept, even through times when it was maybe difficult to hang on to them, because of distance or because of other things that were going on in my life and other influences, shall I say. So I would say if you're alone and you're unhappy, try and find a way to change it. I'm not saying move in with somebody straight away just so you're not alone. Absolutely don't do that. But, if you don't have friends, then it's not easy, especially if you're an introverted person or someone who's socially awkward. It's easy to say, oh, join clubs and do this and do that, but not everybody is up to that, are they? Some people can't. Some people can't just walk into somewhere and introduce themselves and chat to people. But I think if you get to the stage where you're so unhappy alone, you kind of have to do something, and there's always a way. I do believe you can always find a way that will suit you, and it might take some work, and it might be just one other person. A classic way is to find something to do with a hobby that you have. So I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, are creatives or stitchers or whatever. If you can find a local stitching group or something like that, or if even that is too much, I find sometimes just going for a walk here, and I can either go up the lane where I nearly never see anybody, or I can go through the woodland into the local park where I'll see lots of people any time of day. And even that, when you just might say good morning, or exchange a few words because each other's dogs are your dog, your dog's playing with their dog or whatever. Even those little bits of human interaction can be uplifting. So I think if you live alone and you're in all day, really try to go out. Really push yourself even to just go out, even if you don't speak to anybody. Even if if you live in a city, if you just walk down the high street, down a shopping street, there are other humans there, or someone catches your eye, just someone smiling at you can make you feel better. I'm really trying to think of ways, because I really do feel, I have those moments and I have had over the years, even when I was in a relationship. Actually being in the wrong relationship can be the loneliest place there is, can't it? So yeah, so I would say if you're living alone and you're struggling and it's really making you unhappy, just baby steps, just try and find a way to interact with people day to day to start with, and see if you can build that up to finding a local group, a social group, or just whatever interests you, and make an effort in your day-to-day contact with people to maybe go a little bit further than you normally would. So the lady on the checkout in the supermarket, rather than just please and thank you, just say how you doing, or we're all human beings here together, aren't we? And it's just those little bits of human contact. So that was a long witter, and it's brought the atmosphere down a bit. So let's try and lift it back up. What's next on my list? Discipline. Tips for being productive or feeling productive. I shared something that I had from Maria in the Facebook group a few videos ago, and I've passed it on right, left and centre, and I think it's such a great tip because it's flexible, but it's got structure to it, and that is every day you do something practical, something physical and something creative. You can choose what those things are, but those are your 3 goals per day. And I must say that even on my worst days, I've managed to do that. And I know that's me, and that's, not everybody's the same. But I think if you just sort of almost have that as a mantra, if it's a day when you're feeling unproductive, and this wasn't necessarily about stitching or creating or crafting or whatever, it was just about, I think it was just about generally, it appears that I'm doing stuff. I did a lot of work to my house, my home before I came to live here, and but you see that I don't make videos of me laying on the sofa for hours, watching Netflix and eating chocolate. I do that sometimes, and feeling miserable. I try not to be that kind of social media thing where you see all the wee, my life is so perfect. I try not to be like that. But at the same time, if I'm feeling that low, I'm not going to make a video because, well, you saw me last time when I was ill, and I just did that little bit at the beginning, looking like, I nearly said a rude word, looking like, death warmed over, my granny would have said. But yeah, I think I am resourceful, and that's maybe partly DNA, partly upbringing, probably a combination of the two. But I'm not always, I can't always get up and do something. Coming here, making a home for myself, that was a therapeutic exercise. I know in order to feel happy, I have to have nice surroundings, surroundings that please me, my things around me, nice bright colours and somewhere comfy to sit and stitch and all that. So that I did that as a therapy thing, but having the motivation to do that under those circumstances, I think it was maybe because of the circumstances that I had the motivation. And I am one of those people that kind of gets the bit between my teeth, as they say. When I was coming here decorating every day, when I stayed with a friend who lives just over an hour away from here, and I was coming here every day decorating before my stuff was brought over. She kept trying to get me to take a day off, but I was, a woman on a mission and wouldn't be stopped. That's just my character, I had a task to do and I put my head down and I did it. Not everybody can do that. So if you can't, I think if you can sort of say, right, today I don't feel like anything, I don't feel like doing anything, I feel utterly blah. I'm going to do a practical thing, a physical thing, and a creative thing. So the practical thing might be washing the dishes. A physical thing might be walking around the garden, or if you've got a garden, or doing a bit of yoga stretching, or whatever, just something small. Just set yourself really small goals. And a creative thing might be a bit of stitching or a bit of knitting, and I'm going to talk more about specifically creative block later or in another video, because this is, I'm really wittering. I think that's the key. Just set yourself small goals. Don't set yourself great big goals that you're going to maybe fail at, and that will just make you feel worse. And don't beat yourself up if you have a lazy day. You know, I think the word this woman used that asked me the question was sloth. That she's a sloth or a sloth, however you pronounce it. So what? You know, if there's nothing you have to do, don't should yourself, as long as you're happy. I mean, it bothers me if my house is... There are certain things that bother me in terms of tidiness and cleanliness, and certain things that don't. We're all different. It bothers me if there are dishes in the sink. I'd rather wash them up. Other people don't mind dishes in the sink. There's no right or wrong. There's no, you know, no police of washing up that's going to come and tell you off if you leave your pots in the sink overnight. So yeah, just be kind to yourself. Another good friend gave me some wonderful advice recently. She thought the way I was talking I was being hard on myself for, you know, how I'm feeling and what I'm doing. And she said to me, what would you do if a friend of yours was telling you all this? What would you say to them? And I said I would say gentle, supportive things and, you know, so forth. And she said, well, why wouldn't you give yourself the same grace as you would give a friend? And so I say that to you. Don't be so hard on yourselves. Imagine how you would respond to a friend who was telling you the things that your inner voice is telling you, and give yourself the same grace. Yeah. That was a very long witter for like a 3-word comment on my bit of paper. Organising and minimising supplies. Yes, I've talked about this a lot. How I don't like to have too much stuff. I find it overwhelming to have too much stuff. I had a lot more stuff in France because I had a lot more space. I like things to be organised, how, you know, I like them to be organised, which other people might say is a mess, but I know where everything is. I make my little cloth bundles and I work from those. And then I have some other tubs and baskets with other cloth in. And there's, oh dear, mind your little bone. In these big drawers behind me, there's one of these drawers has got French linen in sheets and things I brought from France. And there's another tub in my little craft room with smaller pieces of, you know, linens in, mostly white for dyeing or eco-printing and so on. The other chest of drawers over there has got my paper and journaling supplies in. And then in my studio cupboard thing, where my cheese boxes are, there's what's on my shelves, and I think there's one big sort of tub underneath which has got some commercial cloth pieces that have either been given to me or I've got from back in, you know, 20 years ago when I did used to buy new cloth. So basically I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't have, you know, masses of it in an attic or in a shed or anywhere. All I've got is that. I did have more, but even then I didn't have... There's a studio tour way back on my channel of my studio in France. So if you go back there you'll see how much I had then. I think I've probably halved it maybe, or maybe a third of it. Why did I leave it behind? Well, number one, I don't have room for it here. I could have asked someone to store it for me, but why? I could have taken it to my mother's, but she doesn't really, you know, that wouldn't have worked. And it was the same with other, you know, not my craft supplies, but other stuff. It was just, I don't know how to say it without, you know. It was easier to just leave stuff that didn't bother me than have an argument about it. We put it like that. So I just held everything in my hand and looked at it and said, well, I'd be sad if I'd never see you again. And if the answer was no, I won't be sad, then I left it. You know, and I brought useful things. I brought things that I needed that would cost me to replace. And obviously, of course, I brought sentimental things. But what I had came in one small van. And, you know, my craft and sewing supplies and my wool for knitting and all that was part of that. So it was quite a ruthless exercise. It just felt right to do it like that. Of course I could have just taken everything, paid for it to be stored somewhere and then dealt with it later, but I didn't want... I wanted the transition to be from there to here and no in between. I don't know if that makes sense. It just felt right. You know, I just trusted my gut, as they say, and it felt right. So yeah, so working from minimal supplies. Even when if you watch my crafty videos, where I'm making, you'll see I talk about pulling out some cloth to work with and then editing. I just find it overwhelming to have big piles of stuff around me. That's just me. Other people, I watch other creators and they have big piles of stuff everywhere and they love it and they produce beauty in amongst all this, you know, whereas that for me sort of doesn't suit my creative process. Everybody's different. I would say if you've got a lot of stuff and you find it overwhelming and you can't work, then try and find a way to minimise what you've got. And if you really can't get rid of stuff, then put it away somewhere. So go through all the stuff that you've got, pull out a selection that you think fits the projects that you're working on or the way that you work, and that fits in a, you know, in the space that you've got, but in such a way that you can see everything and get at everything easily without making a mess finding things. And then put the rest away if you've got other storage possibilities, you know, in a wardrobe in an unused bedroom or in an attic or, you know, anywhere. Just put it away. And then when the stuff that you've got out that you're using gets low, you can go shopping in your own stuff. Do you see what I mean? Rather than going and getting new stuff. You've got stuff, it's away, and work with what you've got. Because I think, for speaking from my own perspective, creatively, I am more creative with less stuff, because too much choice is overwhelming. And you know, you're looking for that perfect piece of cloth or that perfect bit of paper or, you know, whatever you're doing, because you've got all this possibility, so that perfect piece must be somewhere. Whereas if you've only got a little basket or a shelf or a drawer or whatever it is, oh, I have to go through here, find what's best and make it work. And that makes me more creative. You know, like I said, it might not be everybody, I can only talk for myself. Did I make my... I'm wearing this again because I wore this in Wednesday's video and quite a few of you asked about it. I didn't make it myself, no. I love it. It's cotton, it's fair trade, you know, I bought it new. It was about, I'm trying to think, it's probably 20 years ago now. No, what am I saying? 10 years ago, yeah. It's 2025, isn't it? Yeah, about 10 years ago, not 20 years ago. No, 10 years ago, friends of mine were helping with a festival to raise money for, I can't remember what it was called exactly, but the charity put a school in a bag was the idea. So they put materials in a bag for children in developing countries, I don't know what you call them, so that they could have an education. So paper, pens, you know, all that stuff that they would need was in a little bag. And then these bags were distributed by, I can't even remember, one of the big children's charities, I think mostly in Africa. And so anyway, so my friends were helping with this festival, and there was music and food and, you know, all kinds of stuff. It was quite a big thing. But they were doing what was called the children's field, so face painting. We did making models out of old, you know, recycled materials, old milk cartons and things like that, and I can't remember what else. We were basically entertaining the children. I was very into the face painting. A lot of little girls were running around with quilting designs painted on their faces, because that was about the only thing I could draw. But anyway, whilst I was there, my friend introduced me to a stall holder that was a friend of hers, and these dresses were hanging there, and so I bought one. So that's where I got that from. And yeah, I do love it. And in summer I can just wear it with nothing underneath, and in winter I just put this little thin black jumper underneath it. So that's my top. It's kind of almost chenille because it's got a background, and then strips of cloth have been laid on and then cut, so they do this curly thing. It's that t-shirt cotton type material. And then of course there's a plique on it and some stitching. It's coming apart a bit there. But yeah, I wear it a lot. I do like it. So that's got me to the end of my first section. So my second section I've titled Admin, which doesn't sound very interesting, but I'll run through it reasonably quickly, and then I think probably the rest of it will be for next time. So someone asked about YouTube, if they pause my video and come back later, which I can imagine because they're so long, does that affect anything? It's very kind of you to think like that. I really appreciate that. The answer is I don't really know about pausing. I do know that there's some controversy over, I know some people say that if you're watching a video and you stop, you should run the slider to the end and then YouTube thinks you've watched the whole thing. I don't think that's true. And why does it matter? It matters because, just in brief, YouTube creators are paid not by views or subscriber numbers or anything like that, but only from ads. We get a very minuscule percentage of any adverts that play on our channels. And as creators you can choose, once you're monetized, and there are criteria for that, you can choose either to have adverts at the beginning and the ends of your videos only, or you can also choose to have ads mid-reel. Now I personally don't put ads mid-reel, because the joke I always make is I don't like to be interrupted when I'm talking. But I do every now and then kind of a bit shyly ask you if you would mind letting the ads run. Because if you click skip too soon, I get nothing. I think you have to watch 30 seconds of an ad for the creator to be paid, but it's quite difficult to find this stuff out, at least I can't really find it out. Some ads I know are, minutes long or really long, because you see the little number coming up of how long the ad is. But I'm pretty sure if you watch 30 seconds and then skip, then creators get their share of the ad revenue. I really wished I didn't have to have ads at all, because it's another topic for later on, talking about consuming and buying stuff, and would I become an Amazon affiliate and things like that. The short answer to that is no, I would not. Yeah, it does go a bit against the grain, but basically at the moment I can't afford that principle. I'd love to turn the ads off completely. I can't afford the principle of not having ads. So apologies, and if you wouldn't mind, if at all possible, or just start my video playing, go and get your knitting, go and make yourself a cup of tea, go to the loo, do whatever, and then you don't have to watch, they don't see whether you're watching or not. You don't have to actually watch it, it just has to run. And I do, promise to keep mid-reel ads off unless I get really hard up. I don't know what percentage of difference it would make, but anyway. The other way that YouTube works is by, obviously, the more people that are watching you, the more ads are seen. So the number of subscribers you've got will obviously affect that, and the number of views you get and all that. I try not to look too much at the analytics. When I open my app, which I have to go to be able to look at your comments in a structured kind of way, and see the ones I've replied to and the ones I haven't and so on. It comes up on the first page that opens your analytics. Your subscriber count's gone up, your subscriber count's gone down, your views have gone up, your views have gone down, your revenue's estimated at this. It's really, I just really click away as quickly as possible. I don't really want to engage with it. But the importance of it is, like I said, the more people that see my channel, watch my videos, the more people will be watching ads, the more money I get. And at the end of the day, this is my income. This is how I'm supporting myself. So I have to put my big girl panties on, as they say, and be brave and honest enough to talk about these things. So any support you give me, the thumbs up also helps. The more likes a video has got, the more popular a video is, the more YouTube promotes it, which is kind of a bit bizarre really, because in my sort of kind world I would say no, the ones that aren't really being seen, let's promote those. But YouTube doesn't work like that. YouTube wants the popular videos to be even more popular because of ad views, of course. It's a commercial world we live in. So if you haven't all gone to sleep, if you can just remember the thumbs up. You can do it even if you're watching on TV. Someone told me recently, if you press the up arrow, it'll all come up on your screen, and then you press the up arrow again, and then you can scroll across to the thumbs up and click it. and I sometimes forget. So what I do now is if I'm watching someone that I know and love, like Marion on Marion's World, for example, or Machteld on Daily Dose of Paper, or any other number of people that I watch, Julie at the Still Room Journals I also watch, the minute I start watching, I click the thumbs up. I know I'm going to like it. It's just like giving them a little hug. So yeah, and that's how it helps. You don't get paid for a thumbs up, but it just creates a buzz, if you like, around your video. That's enough about YouTube. The other way you can support me is through Ko-fi, which is a donation platform a bit like Patreon. I went with Ko-fi in the beginning because when I did my research and reading, it seemed to best fit for me. And that is, you just pay me the price of a cup of coffee, basically, or whatever you would like. And you can either do that as a one-off, or you can pledge to support me monthly. And below every video is a link to my Ko-fi page where you can do that. And you can do that either by PayPal or by any other, kind of means of paying online, or by bank credit cards and things. I'm much happier with that as a support mechanism than the YouTube ads, funnily enough, but anyway. Ko-fi has got nothing to do with YouTube. It's it's a completely separate thing. Facebook group, the private Facebook group, we've currently got 4,300 members, I think. It's a wonderful, friendly, supportive group. Everybody shares pictures of all their projects, and there's lovely discussions now and then around how people feel about the work and all that kind of stuff. So if you're not a member, do think about it. I don't really use wider Facebook anymore for personal reasons, and just don't. I don't really have the time or the interest in looking at the wider Facebook. So to me it's just a place where we've got this little room that we can all gather and meet and chat without having to have anything to do with the rest of Facebook. Someone asked how am I managing without a moderator, because I'm moderating it myself. I do keep thinking about asking for help with moderation, and I might have to at one point. But for me it's like a virtual slow stitch group community. So I like to see the posts, and it's not about policing, because everybody's so well behaved there hardly ever needs to be any policing. There's one rule, and one rule only: you mustn't talk about, no, it's not that. Whatever happens in Facebook group stays in Facebook. No, the projects relate to the channel and the projects I do here, and that's not about ego or anything. That's just about not wanting it to become just another generic slow stitch group, because those already exist on Facebook, and that's because that's what the members want as much as what I want, is that the Facebook group is for us to talk about the projects that we share here via my channel. So if I ask for moderation help, it would only be for someone to go through and police if people are posting things that are wildly off topic, or if people are self-publicising, but that doesn't happen. So, and I like to see what you're saying and what you're showing and what you're sharing, because also it informs what I then put into future videos, because I see that if people are struggling with a certain aspect of it, or a project is bothering people in some way, like for example with the comfort cloth, there was a lot, and it's the same here in the YouTube comments as well, but on Facebook there's the advantage that there can be photos, and there can be a real discussion based around that photo on one post kind of thing. So people were talking about the comfort cloth and not knowing what was happening next, which I sort of knew from the beginning that might be an issue for some of you. But I could sort of listen in what people were saying, and I do comment as well, so they obviously know I'm there and listening and reading. But that kind of goes into my brain, and then when I'm making the next video I can address issues. So a moderator couldn't do that, do you see what I mean? So that kind of has to be me, because I use it in that way. Anyway, but if at any point I need a moderator, I will ask for help. I won't struggle alone. Other Facebook groups, I was a member of a couple. One I think is just called Slow Stitch, which is a huge group, and there's another one called Borrow, and another one called Natural Dyeing, that I used to follow, but like I said, I don't now look at anything outside. I don't have I don't have don't have time. There's always time. You make time, don't you, for what you want to do. I use my time to engage with you who watch me here, on Instagram, in the Facebook group, here in the YouTube comments, and making the videos and creating for myself. That's how I choose to use my time, not looking through, other Facebook groups. So beyond that, I can't really recommend any. Would I consider an online shop to sell my work? I did used to, quite some time ago, sell little fabric scrap packs of eco-print cloth and things like that, or little kits to make pouches. I don't really have enough of that kind of stuff. I did think about bringing more stuff from France so that I could share it with you, so I could make bundles of French linens to sell on or whatever, for those of you that can't find that kind of stuff. But I didn't. In terms of selling work I've made, I work too slowly. It's everything I make, apart from really personal things. A couple of people have asked in the past. I mean, a rice bag went to a lady in America. A journal went to a lady here in the UK, because they just asked me in a message if I would consider selling that object. So you can always ask me if you see something, and then I can say yes or no, and I can say how much and what the shipping is, and we can agree or not. But in terms of actually making stuff to sell, no. Beyond exhibitions that I do in person, and I'm going to talk more about exhibitions, I work too slowly. It wouldn't. So there might be the odd one-off thing. But you probably have to ask me. I wouldn't really say, oh, does anyone want to buy this? It's not really me. But you can always ask. Products I use. Beyond the applique pins and the tulip embroidery needles, I'm not going to be an Amazon affiliate. It's just not my thing. I'm not going to do any sponsorships unless something really that really fit my ethos came along. I mean, I'm certainly, I know quite a lot of us are asked quite often by a certain company to sponsor subscription packs to Fat Quarters, and I keep saying no thank you. It's not, it doesn't fit. So I wouldn't do anything. I mean, I talked about the YouTube ads and the principles thing. I wouldn't go just that far against my principles unless I was starving, So yeah, it's just not me. I mean, I'm not criticising people that do and use, and like I said, I'm going to talk later about how I decide what I will consume and not, but it's just not me. But I appreciate the place from which that comment came from. It's a lady that comments regularly, and I appreciate very much the way you asked it and why you asked it. You were thinking about me and trying to suggest, other income streams for me. Thank you so much from my heart that you think of me like that. What's next on the list? I have to peer over buying new things. Where do I draw the line? Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, I often talk about using repurposed cloth. My take on this is that we are all consumers. We all have a carbon footprint. That is unavoidable. I think it's about informed choice. I decided quite a number of years ago that I wouldn't buy new clothes anymore. I did buy this new, I just told you, 10 years ago, and that was in my I'm not buying new clothes anymore period, so I broke my rule. Sometimes we do. But for the most part, for the last 20 years or so, I've hardly bought anything, and if I have, it's been from a charity shop or a thrift shop. That's again my personal choice. I think what I'm trying to say is a little bit my thing that I'm trying to do is textile based, so no new clothes, no new fabric. I do sometimes buy new knitting yarn, but there I try to buy local. In France I used to buy knitting yarn from a French mother and daughter team that produced their own yarn and dyed it. It wasn't naturally dyed, but they dyed it themselves, and it was a small business. So I do try to do that. That's obviously more expensive. We don't all have, the ability to make that choice. But again, I would rather buy less of that less often than have tons of, cheap mass-produced stuff. So I suppose what I'm saying is thinking about things before you buy, rather than just buying things. And now I've got this tiny house, is the the buzzword for it, isn't it? I have to look at something and think, where am I going to put you before I buy it, So that helps. That helps me not. On Sunday I'm going to a big flea market. I might do some videoing, I'll see how I go, because I'm going with a friend and I don't want to, affect my day with her. But I'm going to, it's called a giant flea market. And that's a sort of place where I would be tempted by stuff, because there'll be old, interesting stuff. But I'm going to have to look at things I might want and think, where would I put you? There's a William Morris saying, have nothing in your home which you do not know to be useful or find to be beautiful. I think that's quite a good ethos as well. But yeah, carbon footprint, we've all got one. Even people that are living off-grid, growing all their own food, they still got a carbon footprint. It's much smaller than some, all our carbon footprints are different. And I think it's just maybe just taking responsibility for the fact that you've got a carbon footprint. I'll stop saying it now. There was a thing years ago, I've not fact-checked it, I don't know if it's true, but that a dog has a bigger carbon footprint over its lifetime than a four-wheel drive car, SUV, do they call them? A big car. Many of us have dogs and cats. They also have a carbon footprint. It's not when you say you're eco, when you put the word eco anywhere within your personality or your work or whatever, I have it with my work. I'll talk about that later as well, because I call it eco printing, it's what it's called. It makes some people kind of puts their backs up. It's as if they think you're that we or I am saying I'm better than you because I've made these choices, and then they kind of attack in a way. So I had it here a little bit, someone said when I was in France still, when I talked about flying to England, someone in the comments said, oh, you say you're eco and now you're getting on an aeroplane. Yeah, maybe you could say I'm entitled to take an aeroplane every now and then because I'm eco in other areas of my life. I don't know. But my bottom line is I think about decisions I make before I buy things. Mostly. Of course I impulse buy every now and then, we're only human. But it's just thinking about, do I really need you? Do I really want you? Are you as ethical as you can be in this world? And there can even be the no can be an answer to all that. I don't need you, I don't want you, you're not ethical, and I might buy you anyway, but at least I've thought about it, if that makes sense. If you read Braiding Sweetgrass, by the way, Robin Wall-Kimmerer talks a lot about that. She talks about going to the mall to buy paper. There's a whole chapter about it. And yeah, I just love the way she discusses it. Where are we? Buying new things. Joining a textile or stitch group. Well, I'm a member of a group called CQ West, and we are semi-professional artists for the most part, in that we teach, or we have taught, and we exhibit, and so on. And of course there are other kinds of stitch groups which are, you go with your work and you sit and you stitch and you chat, and it's just, social sharing of ideas. And then there are I've been a member of a stitch group in the past which was only about exhibiting. So there are many different kinds. So I think if you're looking to join a stitch group of some kind or an art group, the first thing is to ask yourself what you would want from it. And, don't join the wrong kind of group. Our group, we have a selection process, and that's to make sure that new members fit us and we fit them equally. If there isn't a group around you that seems right, try starting your own, just put an advert somewhere and spell out your ethos and see if you can attract, and you can start with just maybe 2 or 3 of you in your homes, and then now, we have a village hall that we hire for our meetings, but, start your own. But I think that's the main thing, just think about what you want and be honest about the kind of work you make. Are you making it for your own pleasure and you have no desire or whatever to exhibit or share? And, all groups sometimes have little exhibitions just to share their work, but there's nothing worse than being a fish out of water, I think, when it's something you love and you go and join a group and it's the fit's wrong. So I think that's important. I was lucky in that I was with CQS from the beginning, so I didn't have to go through a selection process. I do feel a bit sorry for the people now that come every couple of years when we open up membership and they have to do a big presentation and everything. I didn't have to do that. Upcoming exhibitions, yeah, I at the moment, or for the last many years, I've only been exhibiting with CQ West. When I lived in England before, I exhibited on my own or with one other or two other people every now and then. And I also entered work in open exhibitions in art centres. But at the moment I'm having a kind of fallow year, personally and with my work, and that happens to align with CQ West's fallow year. So we exhibited last year, this year we're not exhibiting. But 2026 will come around soon enough, and I do have to start thinking about what I'll produce for that. Now I don't come up with an idea and then produce work anymore. In general, I just work and the idea comes from the work. And I'll talk more about that later. So if I'm producing work for an exhibition, for example, the last exhibition was my forager's journal, my forager's apron and a forager's bag. I like there to be a story, or you could call it a theme, but I prefer to call it a story around the pieces that I submit, and I like them to all fit together in some way. That's just me. I guess you'd call that working in a series. That series or story started with the apron. And I was making that apron just for myself, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, you need to put that in the exhibition." And I said, "Oh, it's just a working wearable garment." I hadn't really thought of it like that, but she planted the seed, and the seed grew. And so then I thought, well, what if I'm going foraging wearing my apron with all its pockets? What else would I need? Well, I'll need a bag to put things in when my pockets are full, and I'll need a journal to document and catalogue all the things I forage. So that, the theme grew or emerged from that. So I hope that answers that question. Where ideas come from, I think I answered that as well. For me, the ideas kind of come these days from the work. It didn't always used to be like that, and I'll talk more about that next time. But for me, I work, I start, I pick up the cloth, the needle and the thread, and I work, and the idea comes. And probably the idea is already in there somewhere, it doesn't come out of thin air. Another book about ideas is Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, about how ideas work in the world. The advantage of herbal tea is when it goes cold, it's still pleasant to drink. Unlike, tea with milk. Will I teach in person or online? Online, I did think about doing paid online workshops, and I still might at one point do something like a small group session, more a led session than a taught session, slow stitch or whatever. I'll see. At the moment, the YouTube videos are keeping me pretty busy in terms of online. And I'm quite happy also to just put them out there on YouTube for free, and in terms of revenue or whatever, I get my ad money and I get my Ko-fi subscriptions and support. That's enough for me and Stella and Fredfred to live on. I'm quite happy with that. So I wouldn't be motivated by that necessarily. Teaching in person, that's a different thing, because yes, I would love to do that. I'm not rushing into it because I need to find my feet still a little bit, I think. But if anybody is in the UK and they would like me to teach, if they're in the West Country for a day workshop, I would be more than happy to talk to you about it. And if you are further away and for a sort of a long weekend retreat or something like that, with accommodation and so forth. My only issue with the second thing is I've got Stella and Fredfred to consider, but again, I'd be happy to talk about doing that. Going abroad, no, because of Stella and Fredfred, but if it was in the UK for a long weekend or something like that, I'm sure I could come up with something. Possibly even I could bring Stella with me. A lot of places these days don't mind, do they? So yeah, I mean, I have taught retreats in the past like that, long weekend retreats, and obviously I've taught day workshops. So if anybody is interested, just please either private message me via Facebook or Instagram, or that's probably the best way because then I'm sure to see it, or just leave a comment here. Well, if you can private message me by Facebook or Instagram. I keep thinking I could just put I've got an email address that I use specifically for my work. I could just put that here, people do, but I don't know. I'll see. Where are we? Yeah, when I teach. Do I still knit? Yes I do. I've got a jumper on the go at the moment. It's just a plain, I'll actually show you. Excuse me. There we go. I got this giant ball of wool. It didn't have its band on it anymore. It was outside a wool shop in a bargain bin. I'm not even sure what it is. I think it has got some wool content. Anyway, so I'm knitting a jumper, and I just start at the neck and I cast on, and then I do increases for the armholes, and then when I get below the armholes, take those are the stitches off now for the arms. I then break off and I go back and I knit the sleeves, and then I join back here, and then I knit till the wool runs out and the jumper's as long as it is. There's not a pattern, I just sort of know from doing, and that's how I made my one you see me wear that's the natural colours with the red crocheted cuffs, and also how I made the one that's like a rainbow or a sunset. I've also got a pair of scrappy socks on the go, and I'm also crocheting granny squares in between all that. Sorry Stella, I just threw it and the ball of wool bumped her on the head, but it's only soft. How many rice bags have I made? Somewhere probably between 30 and 40. I probably have got about 6 myself, but I haven't kept a tally. But in terms of, you know, I've sold some at exhibitions, I've made some as gifts and given them away. It must be somewhere up there, and counting. I still love them. And finally, my favourite slow stitch piece is the crumbs of comfort cloth that I made with my dad's shirts and hankies. I should get it to show you, shouldn't I? Here it is. You probably won't really be able to see it because we're too close, but it's after my dad died, I didn't stitch for quite a long time, more than a year. I knitted and crocheted, but I couldn't stitch. And then one day my mother came over and she brought his hankies, and I started cutting them up and making these little squares. And then when I went over sometime later to go through his things with her, I took some of his shirts, and the whole thing grew into this. And I'm now still every now and then stitching, doing fancy stitching on it, and I call it the crumbs of comfort cloth. And there's a little heart, which I did refer to in Wednesday's video when I put the heart on the comfort coverlet that we're stitching at the moment. Obviously because it was my dad, you know, it's all about my dad, who I adored, there he is. And but also because I was stuck, I couldn't stitch, I thought maybe I'd never stitch again. And this got me stitching, so for those two reasons, that's why it's my favourite. And I love the way it looks, but the fact that it's my favourite, really, I've made more artistic pieces, you know, more, I don't know, pieces that have had more critical acclaim, shall we say, don't know how to put it, more worthy, I don't know, but this, it's about the meaning. And the final thing I'm going to say, because I think we're way over the hour, so there will be a part 2 next time, is someone asked me, and I'd not heard of them, if I'd ever done a Myers-Briggs personality test. And I hadn't heard of them or done them as far as I knew. I think I might have done something similar as part of an interview procedure when I left university, but you know. So anyway, so I went and did one online. You can just look up Myers-Briggs, M-Y-E-R-S, Briggs, B-R-I-G-G-S. and you have to answer loads of questions about how you'd respond in certain situations, agree or disagree, or, you know, a sliding scale. And then it tells you what personality type you are. I read my results through quite closely, and it did seem quite accurate, but you can be the judge. You can go and look at it. I'll put a link to the personality type according to this particular test, and you can judge, as far as you know me, whether you think it's right or not. Anyway, I am a protagonist, whatever that means. You can go see. So that's got me to the end of my first page of questions. I've got a whole other page of questions for next time, which will be about projects to do not with stitching necessarily, my textile heritage, how I came to do what I do, what my influences are, and so on, and more details about my practice, how I create, and so on. So that'll be next time. So thank you so much for all those lovely questions. I don't know if I'll ask for more questions for next time. We'll be here forever, won't we? I think probably not. I think I'll just do the part 2 next time and leave it at that. And don't forget to hang on, and you'll see the picture of my hair in dreadlocks. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more Park Home Life Tales. Bye bye.